Happy holidays, Bambinos. In the vast wilderness of Silicon Valley, two co-founders have bemmed on their holiday hats, or try to, while navigating the tangled jungle of agents, AI SDRs, and Markov chains. Join us as they weave between the philosophical and the absurd, uncovering the essence of what makes modern software roar or stumble into 2025. Welcome to this festive exploration of the tech frontier.
We're recording.
Nice.
This is not improvised at all. This doesn't feel like we set it up in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I memorize a full script. Out of frame is the script. Also, some bullet points written on my hand, that have been smudged because I wash my hands.
Gosh darn it.
Yeah. But they would be smudged.
I just realized my whole plan of wearing a Christmas hat is foiled because of the speakers of the. This is terrible. This is a terrible outfit.
It's like one of the. You need to wear like a ball cap or like a beanie if you're wearing an over ear.
But like you would have to wear it under the over ear.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe that's the move.
There's like a technique there, like I've seen some.
I think you do like this and then over.
There you go. And then you drape it and then drape it behind, like tuck it. Oh yeah.
This is incredible. Wow. Yeah. What would we do without you, man? Like,
this is why I am the technical founder. So
that's the truth.
Yeah.
And all the incredible AI agents that we're building to solve all of the problems that humanity has to offer.
I just ran that problem set through my mental agent framework where, if we were to map that as like a partially observable Markov decision process, let's say, there's that first probability of is it even worth it wearing the hat, with the headphones, then the stochastic machine is like, yes, we wear the hat, and then the second is, okay, do I need, what kind of hat, do I need a ball cap? Do I need a bort with the Santa hat? Then it's like, no, we're going with the Santa hat.
The real question is why existing? That's really, can you imagine if the output of the entire chain is like, oh, you should just not exist, basically. That's the real outcome here.
I feel like when I shake out a lot of, when I run through my decision trees through a lot of, ideas like the simply what am I going to eat this morning? I think a lot of the decision tree ends up being, no decision, just why exist in the first place? It's just okay, do I want breakfast today? How hungry I am? Why am I even feeling hunger? Is hunger important? Is it something I should even think about?
This is so deep.
And then, you keep going through, and then you think of how a probabilistic system works, and naturally you'll just be like, well, it's not even worth the hunger, because why is it worth existing?
This is so deep and engaging. I'm sure that the Spotify algorithm is going to put us right at the top of the list, because everyone is going to listen to the first, how long have we been on? 3 minutes, and it's going to be like, this is truly industry content. This is worth pushing to the top of the charts. I am excited to talk about agents, actually, because I feel like it's come up in every conversation we've had with everyone from investors to customers to other people in the industry for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some reasons for it. And I feel like also there are interesting distribution channels. If we think about YC as a distribution channel, which it is, right? Yeah. They've been talking about agents as the future.
Yes.
And Gary actually posted a video shortly, I think it's last week or earlier this week, about how agents are the future. That's a really strong statement, right? It's and so I'm really curious to hear, what do you think about, because I think it's also in the semantics, to be fair. What is an agent at all?
Yeah. I think the way I like to disambiguate it is there's a bet being placed on the narrative, and I feel like the loose definition on the narrative is look, we have these very capable stochastic systems that can they reason in some capacities, of course,
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit there, like, I think we can pick hairs at what reasoning means, blah blah. But okay, there is some reasoning capabilities. The issue is like, just one stop of a pure function or like treating a prompt as a pure function that doesn't really get you much. You're still doing one operation, one process. I mean, context windows are increasing, but at the same time, you're still getting one output at a time.
Yeah.
Like then you need to chain these into deeper decision processes or like, whole actual like trees of tool selection and what to do next and picking between like choices. And that's like at least how I would like people to think about agents. I think, something we discuss a lot is like, it flips the script from architecture and like an access pattern of how things are working. And, something where like, sorry, Viraj, if you still haven't published this yet, but, Viraj, who we had on the podcast recently and also has been working on Tensor Zero, is functionally kind of working on a piece where he's outlining that most LM applications are partially observable Markov decision processes. Like they really are multi-step chains of decisions to make that are very probabilistic. And I mean, that's how you can frame an agent. I mean, I think the issue going back to, despite that tangent, going back to kind of the issue with the disambiguation is that like people are anthropomorphizing agents so heavily. Like, I don't know how many, I don't want to give attention in particular because I don't want these people to get attention, but like people trying to replace humans and advertising all over, about that, where it's like, that's definitely not the case. It's like often to get a rise out of people or to push like a narrative for, investors, the public to see rather than actually, the outcome that you're driving. And when you actually think of the outcome you want to drive is if you're an agent startup, if you call yourself that, which I mean, I don't think we label ourselves as one. I think a lot of folks can kind of read between the lines and see how, especially with the next few layers of our workflow automation, how you could build an agent within BEM, but like, I mean, the outcome is like you have these fuzzy processes, you have a lot of permutations of outputs, you have a lot of variance in inputs, but you want let's say like a deterministic workflow, or at least like an outcome that is consistent and driven. Like I do think there's so much space for agents to do like really, really good work there. And I think the easiest answers is, especially just given at the moment, there's been so much hype that, was kind of bubbling for a bit. And then really, in my eyes, took off when Anthropic launched desktop use, is like, how do we fix
computer use, desktop use?
Desktop use. So
desktop use.
Desktop use, it's functionally like you read about it. It's functionally just like, the A language model paired with, a multimodal language model can operate a desktop environment like a human.
That's so interesting.
And this is like, we both have thoughts about RPA, but this is actually kind of what RPA
is. RPA. Yeah.
This is what RPA originally actually
RPA
promised.
V2.
Yeah. It wasn't like, it's not like the old school, let's say not to, pick at them, but the UI pathway of like, let's see how someone operates 100 different actions of the same process.
Yeah.
And then let's like use traditional statistical modeling to actually map that. Well, now we have that more of that inference and let's say reasoning layer on top of that with these larger multimodal models that can allow you to do that. And, I think Anthropic, it seemed it seems like the rest of the industry was a bit surprised that they came out. Like,
it is surprising
with that, like so quickly, especially given like I such respect for the team, like the transparency they had around that. Where I think I was remembering one tweet that they had in the thread announcing it, where they were like, like I mean, it's like learned so much from modeling human behavior that it started ignoring our instructions and then started just scrolling through images of Yosemite on Google Images just because
that's probably what a human would do.
That's like, I mean, like, how many times have I been like, I wonder what was the when's the Niners Rams game on tonight? Just like kind of drifting away during like some
what's the level of ADD that
exactly. So it's
the
like
agent
it's that, and then like obviously OpenAI raced to like release their own version.
Yeah.
It was yesterday, if not the day before, where Google obviously announced like their version with Gemini among like a slate of like, you know, post reinvent releases. And it's like, obviously everyone needs to kind of stay in the mind share, and these big labs are just kind of releasing stuff like that. But like, you know, like I think like, you know, there's that aspects of like, you know, again, that was a slight tangent, but like that is one new primitive that we are allowing and opening up agents to empower, especially single user, single human workflows. Like, you know, like you know, for example, there's like a bunch of different, you know, I could even see myself using it where it's like, you know, okay, I have to run to a meeting in a few minutes. I, you know, still am, you know, coding in my job daily, and I'm like, I want to run this integration test suite maybe a few hundred times. Maybe I'm trying to catch like a test flake. Rather than scripting this, like, cool, let me just prompt the desktop agent. It'll just run this a few different times. Like, I'll just go to run the bathroom. I'll go to like take a meeting. Cool. Then I've got all these operations run where it's like, you know, the scripting method might be tough given like, oh, like I've got my debugger attached to my IDE. Like, you know, I, you know, have some handwritten things that I like, or arguments I want to pipe into. Let's say I'm using Go, the goal test tool chain. I want to like check race conditions and stuff like that. But I also want this a bit more, let's say, open and like experimental, like rather than like, oh, like here's an exact test suite I need you to run. It's more of like a, hey, just run a myriad of different things. Give me some like evidence that may smell in the same way that I would move my mouse and click around, or I would just run commands or script doing, but like I can just like step away from the computer and do that. And like, of course, that's a very specific example. And like, you know, we as software engineers are inundated with tools to help us with this, but that was something that came to mind where it's like me using something very quickly to actually like actually help like save time. And it's like, it's still like an annoying task that requires a bit of reasoning and a bit of navigation because the inputs are varying. It's like, need to attach a debugger to a port, need to pass some flags like in. It's like a mix of GUI and terminal and like scripting. It's like a bunch of different pieces like glued together there. And that, I mean, those are the kinds of things where it's like, look, that's like pretty low risk. But at the same time, it's a huge productivity gain for me. And if it fucks up, like whatever, like cool. All right, I'm annoyed, like, but I still got to take that meeting. I still got to take my bathroom break. I'm back. Like, cool. At least like tried something out. Like we'll throw some other things at the wall. Yeah.
I think you're totally right. And I think the comparison, I was trying to understand how to frame it in like current status quo terms. And I actually think the closest comparable is there is a clear difference between, let's call it products and prosumer products.
Yes.
And I see Claude's desktop use and ChatGPT, would you call it ChatGPT Pro?
Yes.
Or something like that?
Yeah, the new $200 a month, like with
that one.
Use. Yeah.
I see them as prosumer tools that are happening in the cold path.
Yeah.
And the same way that I actually see, to give you, this is a little bit of a stretch, but I actually see Mac OS as a workflow tool, right? Like it is an operating system at its core. It's enabling a human being. Now, if you go to a company, larger company that is running a business process at scale, you would never just run it on a Mac OS computer as a process. That's why there is actual servers, actual infrastructure that we've built in order to run a business process hundreds of millions of times repeatably. And I think that is that there is some factor of repeatability that needs to happen in a lot of these processes. And I think what people are not understanding is that if you go to a lot of the companies that are building these agents, I saw a few announcements. There was like agent for realtors, agent for financial transactions. And it's like, great. If your target, the ultimate user is an individual and you're building a little workflow tool for that individual, it's going to work. Good luck selling this to a Fortune 500 company that is running this process thousands and thousands of times a day. They're building systems. And I think there's a clear difference between building a system and building a little prosumer tool.
Exactly. And I think like, I mean, there definitely are like, it's not like, let's say, enterprise business processes at scale, but there are like enterprise use cases that do really enable individuals there. And I think, you know, something that I actually like really appreciated this framing, because it felt futuristic in a very tangible way, but in a very kind of grounded, like and I don't mean to use the word flat in a bad way, but in a way that's like very realistic. They're like Tome made this like really high quality, like commercial trailery thing, and it was, you know, an enterprise AE waking up, putting his headphones on, and then functionally an AI agent just relaying to him things about like, oh, like this one company just had this huge compliance fine. Maybe we should sell into them to help them like figure out compliance. And it was functionally like an agent kind of running through obviously a summary and like of things of like not only existing sales pipeline, but like prospects in like a very kind of language interactive like way. And then you could trigger certain actions of like, let's email that, let's do.
Yeah.
And it feels like futuristic in a very tangible way, because it's like, look, like you are an enterprise AE. What are you doing every morning? You're like opening up your damn CRM. You're like looking through pipeline. You're like, who did I forget to email? And that doesn't even have the intelligence of like, oh, like there's something that while I was sleeping, went out, read Wall Street Journal, you know, it like maybe it plugged into a Bloomberg terminal, started seeing like a stock price like falling down given the breaking of some news or some lawsuit like happening, and then being able to kind of turn that into, you know, a potential sales lead. It's obviously not executing on some sales lead or anything like that, but it is like an interplay of like that. I mean, that's the kind of automation that we should be pushing for agents. It's not like the, you know, that's a different from the flip side of like a lot of folks are, you know, trying to say you can automate even that AE itself or like that process or like decision making, where it's like, you know, I've always, you know, despite being a co-founder and CTO, I'm always a bit of a Luddite when it comes to claims and stuff like that. But I'm like, is that something we want? Is that something? I mean, that's something that definitely doesn't work now. Like, and I think
not.
like, and I think quite frankly, is it something we want, or do we want that other like? And again, just to, you know, credit to Tone, that like experience that they express, where it's like that is making someone so much more efficient, giving them so much more deep intelligence, and then allowing them to just make extremely low latency productive decisions and take action.
It's enabling a single human. I actually think, I mean, there's great money to be made in that space. I just don't think that that's the space we're operating in, like ourselves, right? Like it's almost like thinking about it as like layers of infrastructure that you would need to build in order to enable a whole team. How does a whole team cooperate? And I actually think even before AI, there were tools that straddled sort of between these two worlds that are very different from each other. I don't know if you've ever used this tool called FileMaker. And I think FileMaker is the closest comparable of a supposedly pseudo ERP system that is supposed to be a system for running a business, but also is a prosumer tool that you just download on your Mac.
Yeah, I'm grinning because I don't know if you remember from our silo days and for the uninformed listener, our previous startup that we worked on that was working on tools for food distributors and farmers in the ag supply chain, but without naming them, there is a very large, very prominent Bay Area grocery store that runs all of their inventory just off of a FileMaker suite that they had developed. And I remember
that is terrifying.
Speaking with them as we were like, hey, we have a very modern ERP system that an order management system that speaks your language, and then seeing kind of their existing stack. And it's one of those things where you know, like I think to quote our friends at DOS, like in Wiley there in particular, it's like a lot of these folks in these kinds of industries just find so many ingenious ways to build interfaces and like kind of trying to tape tools together to do that. And like, you know, that, but like that from like an operational like perspective, is just, it becomes so untenable. And it's also just one of those things where it's like, imagine an agent trying to reconcile and glue those processes together. It just sounds like it's the same way as like you're taping Airtable with a bunch of other things to run your supply chain, your furniture supply chain or your grocery store supply chain, where it's like, can you do it? Yes. Is it extremely faulty? Are you making mistakes constantly? Is it potentially creating more work for you than it's saving you? Yes. you know, and I think like an agent follows a lot of that framework for a lot of these types of business processes.
I think it's the niftiness factor. Like I think a lot of people are falling into the demo like wow factor. It's the cheerleader effect of like startups, which is like you see it posted, big fans of YC, big fans of Gary, but it is true that like there's almost this like glitter factor of like, whoa, the demo is so impressive and like it's so sparkly. Does this seem like it works? Like it works? Maybe. Yeah. Does this scale? No, it doesn't. And I think that, to your point, can I build a profitable business with like FileMaker as my backend? I think I could. But the moment that I start growing, I'm going to realize, well, let's build the patch on top of the patch on top of the patch.
Yeah.
You start operating defensively rather than actually growing.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In any case, I mean, I feel like a lot of what we're building at the end of the day is a system.
Yeah.
One thing that has been on my mind a lot is the fact that you could define these agents as a Markov chain.
Yeah.
And that has advantages and disadvantages. My biggest fear is actually that if you concatenate the lack of, let's call it, accuracy in others, one after the other, and if your agent is just a consecutive list of calls to ChatGPT where you're just trying to shape things, this like agentic workflow, I think there's a lot of potential to do a lot of like bad, basically, or just mangled stuff.
Of course, but like, you know, I think why like that framing, the Markov chain framing makes a lot of sense is because like you want to be able to zoom out and get a library of decisions like made. You know, it's like one of those things where it's like, I think, you know, something that I feel like I, as an engineer, speak about a lot with our team, other engineers and stuff consistently is like, you know, in a lot of these directions, it is a very different way of building software where it's like, you know, we're coming from the world of, well, myself in particular, like not, you know, having in earnest been a machine learning engineer before. You know, going from deterministic like software that it is pure functions. Like I just like more of a, you know, personal aside, like why I don't use functional programming languages in production or for work, but the concepts there like really ring true for me. It's like there's pure function, there's keeping things very straightforward. Like I'm a diehard fan of like the structure interpretation of computer programs, like just like that Lisp style of programming. That doesn't apply, and it's a kind of really a false simplification of a lot of these new methods of building because you can't rely on it's probabilistic. There is a universe of outcomes. There isn't just one deterministic like outcome. You know, and I think the way to de-risk agents in these Markov chains is like there's kind of like two axes here. There's one where it's like there's the observability and the history. It's just like you can only fix what you observe and what you measure. You need to kind of run simulations of these and have like more of an experiment-driven product philosophy of like you need to run experiments to then inform how that system does work in practice and de-risk that system. You bring fault tolerance in there, you know, maybe some more classical, you know, things that more align with an SRE mindset or distributed systems where there are failure points, there are errors. Like how do we handle retries? How do we handle observability? What self-healing capabilities are there? Like, you know, I think the issue is it's not, you know, sometimes you can reduce it to as simple as just like an SRE, it's just like, cool, let's just hard reboot this one node where it's like, cool, let's just run the damn thing again. Like, you know, I think having been a part of like more open enterprise, open AI tool call conversations where, you know, this has changed now, but like, you know, 6-8 months ago, the main problem everyone had and OpenAI didn't really have an answer to other than retrying is like, hey, I'm trying to use tool selection. I'm trying to generate structured outputs. Half the time, JSON's not even valid. Or like there's some random hallucination or something. And then they're just like, just retry.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously they did improve that, but like that, I mean, that is the same as like the naive like SRE way, which actually does work a lot where it's just like, just turn the damn computer on and off again. like we'll try it. We'll try like running it again. So there's like, that one piece of the observability and like kind of building that into the self-healing. And then the other axis is actually like, introducing the right level and balance of deterministic systems in between. You still want to de-risk a lot of that stochasticity and have those clear connections that are going to be predictable, can actually handle a lot of edges and actually constrain inputs. And at least like, instead of blowing things up, it's like failing fast or like having sensible defaults, and then being able to like, go back to that observability layer and see like, what happened? Why did it react this way? What were the chain of inputs, decisions being made? Like, I think a lot of people are labeling this as agent ops, like, that's branding, like whatever. Like I don't think that's really too outside of like, what more classical observability has been. Like, like there's the Grafana and Prometheus world. Like, there are a lot of folks, like I think very intelligently have just built on top of, Datadog as well as, Prometheus, and if they're trying to do self-hosting and open source and stuff like that. But like, I think those are just huge tool sets that you do need and are critical to just running anything sensibly in production.
You need visibility. You need to be able to monitor it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the difference between a prosumer product and a true system. What do you think about code gen? Because I feel like we keep going back and forth, even in the industry. We have a really exciting podcast episode programmed for next week that I will not reveal. That is it's going to be entirely about code gen. And I worked in CodeGen many, many years ago when CodeGen started. And I feel like I hear more and more. We got this question from an investor the other day, which is like, how do you use LLMs in your day-to-day to like accelerate the team?
Yeah.
And I felt like that was such an interesting question because on one hand, I am subscribed to GitHub Copilot. I'm not going to lie. Like I think it's really useful. I was just suggesting Jenny, we're building some internal tools, and I suggested Jenny this morning that she should try out V0. I think Vercel has built something very, very interesting. I wouldn't use it in production, but I would use it for internal tooling. And I feel like my only qualm with CodeGen is, like any tool, abusing it.
Yes, exactly. I feel, to even frame it like that and to get even more, let's say, pedantic about it, it's a tool. Like I think people expect magic. Like, we saw, we saw Devin get generally available in release like this week, or at least on some like wait list. And I think like insensibly good for them. There's a lot of caveats because like, the first, push came out and it was promising the world. And the caveats were a little hidden, and it was, in my opinion, it was pretty misleading. They did the release and there are a ton of caveats, and there's kind of ways that they're de-risking it in a lot of senses. But like, but I do actually, I actually do respect that they've kind of changed. I will not necessarily change the narrative, but they have changed the posturing of the product, where it's like, look, this is like a tool, like give it, more simple tasks. Like I think one of the case studies they had was like a group of open source developers that like, I think we all feel a ton of empathy for folks working in open source and just like their contributions there. But it's like, they get inundated with tickets. They get like so many PRs and stuff like open. And and frankly, a lot of these are straightforward. They're, README fixes. They're, they're null pointer things. There's very straightforward like things that, maybe to be, to be that guy, like maybe some static analysis can help there, but like at the same time, these are like tasks that like it's just so onerous, especially for folks like that. And it's like, and I see so much value in there, but like the whole thing is about abusing the tool and also making the tool look like what it's not. And also like, we have I think a mix of opinions on the team when it comes to code gen, and thankfully our team like very respectfully uses it. Like, we have some, we have an enterprise subscription to Cursor. Like I know folks on the team have been, have used Copilot in the past. Like I'll let you get into your kite story because you actually have much more intimate knowledge of like the early innings of this than I will ever have. But, I think that the way I like to frame it is like, and me to get all out there is like, it again is another tool. And like, I think it's funny when folks judge. There's like this weird judgment against folks who don't use code gen for tools, because like I think I will be that person. I don't use code gen like really at all. Like I barely use any of the tools. I write things just on my own. Like I really appreciate like JetBrains autocomplete. I actually don't use their Copilot thing, like, or like fill in the blank thing like that much. But like, I think for me, just the way my brain works, CodeGen slows me down. It often mispredicts things, or it's like there's lots of like random weird bugs or syntax things that I just wouldn't do. And like, because I view, especially at an early stage, programming languages as a communication tool to other developers.
Yeah.
Obviously the functionality really does matter, but like we're moving fast. Things need to be readable. Things break. I think like, it's hard for these tools to understand some of those pieces. And like, and I always kind of think back to like, as like, took a trip out to Japan like a couple months ago, and actually was able to meet with like a friend, Uji Yamada, who he actually just makes hats for a living.
Yeah.
There's and he hand makes them. He hand makes them with the assistance of like a 50s Mitsubishi sewing machine with like a clutch on it. And he actually makes, like, when you hear him talk about it and you hear him see him do it, he actually makes hats on that thing faster than many machines do, and they're of higher quality because it's just like he's just good at what he does. He knows how to operate the fuck out of that clutch. He knows how to like just sew things very quickly and move like very fast, like there. And there's just that certain artistry and quality that he wants to provide. That's one tool that he uses. People make hats on assembly lines with thousands of others of different tools, and like, there are pros and cons to everything. But I think this like sweeping like, oh, like you will be left behind without code gen X, Y, and Z. Like, I think it's pretty laughable. Like, it's not hilarious. It's not to say that it actually isn't helping us significantly. It actually is. For I know tons of people who it just like accelerates their workflows. Yeah. That's awesome for them. But like some people are better at hanging up and painting with just a hand, like just a hammer and a nail. Other folks, they're just much better with a drill.
Oh no, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, I actually think the main driver is laziness. Yeah. And I mean, you see it not just in coding, but in the way that mainstream adoption of ChatGPT is very different from the way that you and I, I know you don't use ChatGPT, but I actually use ChatGPT a lot. Yeah. Especially for my personal hobbies. So for example, I use it to research things about history that I really like. When you go to, and I invited anyone to do this, if you go to the ChatGPT subreddit on Reddit, you'll actually see how mainstream users are using ChatGPT. Yeah. And it's truly the laziest, most primitive ways that you can imagine. Even if you see, I mean, if you have a profile on Well-Found or one of these like recruiting systems, you'll see people are just using it to generate CRUD to send it to you. Yeah. And what I'm wondering is if people don't realize, I think the issue with Gen AI in general, generation of content, and this started, 10 years ago when we started Kite, is that I actually don't think the issue is in the generation of anything. I think the issue is communication. Yeah. And so I actually thought it was really interesting where all of these companies, I mean, let me put a scenario in perspective, right? All of these companies that are using Lever or Workable or Indeed, or no, is it Indeed? All the like the recruiting platforms.
Yeah, Indeed is one, yeah.
They are all trying to adopt AI features to process the cover letters, the resumes, and everything. Yeah. But all of the candidates are actually using ChatGPT to generate the content. Yes. So now we're back to square zero where people are generating CRUD and just trash with ChatGPT. Exactly. And then people are using ChatGPT to remove the trash.
And I think that's like the interesting thing to kind of jump in there about like everyone talking about AI for recruiting. I think the way I would disambiguate it is like the recruiting automation to me is nonsensical. I think the sourcing that is a clear win.
Yeah.
It's we're using it for search, we're using it to analyze, like, things and profiles, like not just like direct applications and stuff, but like, I was, I was speaking with Adriana last night, who head of talent at Uncork, who investors and partners of us, but like, she flatly said, and we agreed upon, like, still got to do all the hard work of recruiting.
Yes.
It doesn't like actually like it doesn't make the most time consuming part actually that much easier, because that's like having real conversations with people, understanding people, seeing if they're fits, selling them selling themselves. But it does accelerate maybe the finding a bit, and like it's going from, well, I was about to say it's going from spray and pray to more targeted. I don't think the spray and pray stuff has changed that much. I think it's maybe gotten slightly more intelligent, but like at least for the search capabilities like that, I mean, that is like a big shift, but it's still hard work.
It is still hard. I feel like two things happen at the same time, and maybe I sound a little bit like an old fart when I say it like this. I think we are in an era where high quality hard work isn't as appreciated, and AI just happened to flourish at the same time, and the two mixed together are a terrible combination. And you can see this. I'll give you an example. I think AI SDRs are the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my entire life. I think that by existing, they're actually killing their own market.
Agreed.
Because we get flooded, you and I get flooded with these emails every day. They're getting worse and worse. They're all going to spam. No one is reading them. The way that customers are buying software is changing.
Yes.
And not just because of this, but because of industry trends. And so we're all in this war. I mean, there's like 35 different companies right now building AI SDRs.
Yeah.
They're all very bold. You were just talking about the billboards. They're right outside our office.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I've seen what they can do because we receive their emails.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
And it's like this, like, and this is, I don't really want to, let's say, comment too much or about strategy and stuff. It's a valid strategy to really do the marketing push, like trying to do the race to out fundraise each other with big names and status, and get that status and stuff like that. Like that's one strategy of building things. But like I think the core problem there is like, was that a job that needed to be automated in the first place? And also, was there like, how much like true efficiency and conversion is it like driving? Like, I think that's something where it's like, do you want to waste the time and money? And also, do you want to burn the goodwill? Like, for me, it's just like, I don't know how many emails I've gotten of the same exact format where it's like this fake forwarded message of like, oh, John mentioned your name at lunch 5 times today. And then it's like this fake forward, and it's just like, oh, we need to like chat. It's just like, when I see an email like that, I immediately have a negative reaction, and also just don't. Why, like, engaging with that vendor is like, if it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. And like, and I think, and I hate to say it, a lot of times we do buy things very emotionally. There's plenty of tools that do the same thing. And it's hard not to know until you touch the product, but like the way an organization comports themselves is just like, cool. Then like, is this kind of laziness the way that you actually build the product? Is this how you view your customers as like commodities? It's like, there's a whole kind of tree of things that kind of come there that are just like a turnoff.
Oh, totally. It's terrible. They should start making these little messages of like, hey, you should reach out to Upal, and like the fake forward. They should start making them like a little verbally abusive. And so it's like, hey, you stupid idiot, you should reach out to Upal and just see what people's reaction would be.
I mean, there's enough bullying training data in these language
That is true.
models, so like, I'm sure we could repurpose a lot of the prompting.
They could just use Reddit actually as a training data source.
That's already happened.
No, I think you're totally right. And I mean, we've tried these tools ourselves. I've tried Item, I've tried Octave. actually like that both are focused more on the workflow than on
Yeah.
replacing the human being.
Yeah, and like I mean, just seeing you play around with Octave and like it was able to help us generate collateral and stuff like that like, too, and
Yeah.
then make the decision about how to disseminate and who to reach out to. Like, yeah,
I think what's really funny is if you hire, and this is probably one of my hottest take today, is if you hire a CRO today, and the first thing they say to you is, we need to hire an army of 15 SDRs to like make this company grow, you should probably just fire them immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these companies are trying to automate something that is no longer relevant.
Yeah.
Because go-to-market, especially outbound, has changed dramatically in the last 2 to 3 years. The way people buy software has changed a lot. It's a lot more emotional. It's a lot more network driven.
Yeah.
It's less cold calling and cold emailing people all day long. And we actually built this at Silo, and it worked for a while. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like, just for the listener, that was like a definitely a very different emotion. It was like, we were trying to sell to distributors and farmers who like you can't. It's hard to kind of look them up on the internet or find like it was a very different sales motion. Like but I think for these AI SDRs, it's like they don't even have the data set to even attack those kinds of things, and I think the irony is like to attack those kinds of people who are like already pretty let's say wary of automation and things taking their jobs. I don't really think that's the best like first impression even there either. Like, and we are the we are folks that are like right in the middle of Silicon Valley, and even it gives us like a bad taste.
I still get emails from the calendar with a K. They still think I run an HVAC company. They still think we build either agricultural drones or HVAC systems. And it just is such a bad note. It's such a bad look on the company.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I'm glad we did this. What a fun little improvised episode. We also have a really cool episode next week.
I'm excited about that one.
We won't say who, but because that will jinx it. But yeah, any parting notes for 2024? What are you most excited about in the world of AI coming into 2025?
I mean, I think a wish is just more pragmatism. I think that's my wish every year, just for technology in general. I think especially over the last few years, it's like it's so exciting, but at the same time, it's like let's calm down a little bit, like folks. Like let's like ground ourselves to really. There's so many real problems, like, and I think like such core to our BEM philosophy is like how much software has actually really failed us over the last couple of decades in so many senses, and we now have are able to build the next layer of UIs that fulfill that promise. Like finally, let's not get too caught up in the noise. Like beyond that, let's build things that like actually really solve and elevate us and solve like problems. That is my big like hope and dream for like next year is like just sense and sensibility. Like,
pragmatism.
Just like a little bit more of that. Like it's fun, it's exciting. I love sci-fi too, y'all. Like, but let's build some real things. Yeah.
I have a similar wish for 2025. I just want people to ground themselves a little bit. I think it's really funny that like the hype has changed a little bit in the last year. We were at Cerebral Valley a few weeks ago, and they were saying how I think Menlo Ventures did a little presentation where they were saying people have stopped fine-tuning and have started thinking about agents.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there is these waves of hypes. And so maybe we'll reach in 2025 a wave of hype where it's like, oh, shoot, we actually need this to work. Very few people. I mean, look, ChatGPT was down for 2 hours yesterday? 4 hours. And so, great. Maybe the race shouldn't be for building the best model. Maybe we already have incredibly powerful models. Maybe the race should be to build reliability and like good infrastructure, So anyways, awesome. Boom.